Over the last 13 years, I've seen some of the best and some of the worst decisions people have made for their wedding day. I've brought it down to 5 things. Get these things right, and you'll avoid making the same mistakes. Hello, I'm Matthew, 3-time Magic champion and Magic coach living in Cambridge, and about 80% of my work is at weddings. I've seen everything from helicopters to alpacas. But what is it that really makes a wedding stand out? Well, it's people, music, dinner, speeches, and timing. Let's start with people. So the number one mistake I see couples making is hiring the wrong people. People like the photographer, videographer, magician, musician, all these people that are visible and interacting with you as a couple, but also your guests, your friends and family. You want them to be able to vibe with you, share your sense of humour, and get an idea of what they're going to be like on the day, because if they're not your kind of people, then you're going to be making a bad hire. If you're thinking of a photographer, for example, you want to be comfortable in their presence. So if they're taking photos of you in the boudoir, you want to feel comfortable around that person and not awkward. If you're having a magician go round, you want to make sure that the sense of humour that they've got and their style of performing is going to gel well with their guests, because sometimes sense of humours don't align. It's just, it's the wrong thing, it's awkward, it creates a really weird atmosphere. Same with musicians. Some musicians are ambient, they don't say any words, they're just singing the songs and getting on with the job, and they're quite pleasant people. Other musicians want to be the centre stage, they want to get people up and all this kind of stuff. And if you know that your guests aren't the party types that are going to get up and dance, and you've hired them to try and change your guests in one day, it's not going to happen. So try and find the right people for you, but also for your guests on the day. So how do you avoid hiring the wrong people? It's really simple. Once you've whittled them down to say 5 people, pick up the phone, have a conversation, hop on a Zoom call, meet people for coffee. You'll get an instant idea of what sort of person they are, whether they're going to gel well with you and your guests on the day. Not all people are equal, but find the right ones for you. This brings us on to music. Now, there are 4 periods of the day where music can be used. Most couples think of the first and the last, which is the ceremony music, walking down the aisle, and then the party, so it's either a band or a DJ. But in the middle there's a drinks reception and the wedding breakfast. And these are 2 periods of time where music is really valuable and really helpful for filling in that kind of awkward silence, because you only realise how loud awkward silence is when you're in it. During reception drinks, it's nice to have something just to fill in the background. You don't need a band, you don't need anything big and flashy, but a string quartet is quite popular, singer and guitarist, something like that, just to fill in that space. It's really nice to have ambient music. It fills in those silences in conversations, especially when people haven't seen each other for a long time. There's a bit of social anxiety, a bit of social awkwardness of, who do I vaguely know? I'll go talk to them for the next hour and a half while the couple are having their photos done. So give them something just to basically give them the security to be quiet, not have to say things and fill in that empty space with words. It will just make everyone feel much more relaxed. And the same during the wedding breakfast. Once you've figured out the table plan, who's sitting next to who, generally speaking, half the table might not know the other half, or they haven't seen them for a long time at least. So having some kind of music to fill in that and add a splash of colour and sort of feel a fuller experience during the wedding breakfast is really valuable too. Just to tag on here, there's also the choice between having a playlist or live music, and I would always recommend going for live music because it gives people something to talk about and watch, and there is a focal point. So it's more of an experience, it's live, which is always more enjoyable for everyone, but people can also stop, they can take photos of it and they can watch. Whereas if you have a playlist just playing on a phone or on a laptop, it's not something you're going to sit down and watch and talk about. It's just music that's happening in the background. So live music is more than just the music. It's having a photo opportunity, it's having something to talk about. It's, my dad used to be in a band, or my dad used to play the guitar. Oh, do you remember Jimmy? All those sorts of things happen. You don't tend to do that when you've just got a playlist playing. Having a live musician on the day is definitely worth its weight in gold. This brings me neatly on to a band versus a DJ in the evening. Both have their pros and cons. People generally think DJ, we can play any song. So we've got much more there's many more songs at our disposal, right? But having a band, a live band, gives a sense of energy that a DJ just doesn't bring. It's much harder to find a good DJ than it is to find a good band. There are many more good bands out there than there are DJs. In fact, I've worked with hundreds of DJs and I only recommend one of them because I know that they do an excellent job and they've been doing it since they were like 12. So they're passionate about their job as well. So yeah, just consider that the energy and the space and the interaction that a band brings to a night. Yes, you might be confined to a certain set of songs, but there are lots of amazing bands out there who are 2-3 people bands that can play a massive array of songs, get people up on the dance floor and have lots of fun. And also they probably only do 2 45-minute sets anyway, and they fill in those gaps with DJ sets. So yeah, a lot of bands are offering both now, so consider live music with a band. This brings us on to dinner, the wedding breakfast. Now, I've worked in some of the worst venues and some of the nicest venues over the breadth of my career, and might I add, award-winning venues. And I've seen how food should be served, and it has a name. It's called fan service. What they've cleverly done is they've taken the table plan. Everyone sits in their designated seat, so they know who's in what seat. So you've got a table of 10 people, you've got a team of 10 waitresses or waiters, and they all deliver the food all in one go. They step back and they can walk away. It's the best thing ever. It just improves the whole dining experience. While we're on the subject of the wedding breakfast, it's really important to consider the centerpieces and making sure they're not going to get in people's way. Having a big bouquet of flowers in the middle of every table looks amazing for the photographer before everyone walks in, but from a practical point of view, they're going to take that £80 investment and put it on the floor so they can actually speak to each other. Or worse, they won't move it and you'll have half of the room just not really engaged with the other half of the room. So yeah, think about centerpieces. Go tall and thin so people can still see each other, or low and wide. This brings us on to the speeches. Now, when to have them is a really good question. You can have them before, after, or in between courses. I've seen all three. I've been to hundreds and hundreds of weddings. I've seen what works and what doesn't. The only one that works and works really well is having them at the end of the meal. The other two are options. It happens, but it's nowhere near as good as having them at the end, and it's for a few reasons. As soon as guests arrive at a wedding, they're hungry. Generally speaking, people don't tend to eat much before going to a wedding day because they're anticipating being fed. So as soon as they go into the wedding breakfast and they sit down at the tables and somebody says, "Oh, and now time for the speeches," everyone's going, "Oh no, we're just hungry. We just want to eat food." The second thing is at the end of the meal, once everyone has eaten some food, they've had a few drinks, maybe there's been entertainment going on around the tables to make the vibe and get people feeling much more relaxed with each other, the speeches are going to go down much better because guests have had a chance to laugh with each other and have conversations, so they feel relaxed in each other's company. So when the speeches come around, they're funnier, they go down better. Also, after eating a 3-course meal, nobody wants to move. Everyone is quite happy with the food baby, sat down at a table, and they're quite happy just listening to speeches for the next half an hour, 40 minutes. So having them at the end of the meal is always the best thing to do. They'll go down better. If you've got any gags going or jokes in the speeches, they're going to be better. For those people that are doing the speeches, the biggest mistake I see is not being heard. If guests can't hear you, it's just very awkward because everyone's there for you on your day. And they want to be there for you, they want to laugh at the jokes. So make sure that you use the microphone, and you just have to hold the microphone here. That's all you need to do. And if you have the option to use a microphone, always take the option. There are very few people that have been professionally trained to project their voice, and being heard in some of those big spaces, you might think your voice will travel. It doesn't, it really doesn't. So yeah, use a microphone when you can, and make sure you use it properly, so hold it still. And you'll be fine. And also make sure that the microphone is charged. I've seen a few microphones go dead in the middle of a speech, and that's the venue's responsibility. Finally, this brings us on to the timings. If you start the ceremony later in the day, people will have more energy in the evening. If you start the ceremony at 11 or 12, then you have a very long day, and by the time it comes after the meal, say 5 o'clock finish for the meal, 6 o'clock even, and you want them to party until midnight, it's just not going to happen. And also not having a drinks reception which is any longer than an hour and a half. If you have, and there is a caveat to this, if you have more than let's say 120 guests, then you can get away with doing an extra half an hour. It just goes on for too long and people are getting hungry. I've been to weddings where people are saying, can you make a sandwich appear? We're starving. And never get fooled by the canapes because they don't fill people up. Don't be fooled by that. If your wedding organizer says, oh, there'll be canapes, they'll be fine, they won't. Just trust me, they won't. I've seen it happen hundreds of times. If you like this video and you're still planning your wedding, no matter what stage you're in, you'll love the Ultimate Wedding Guide. It's over 20 lessons and I've covered everything, all the way from finding your venue to finding your entertainment, what questions to ask your photographer, how to deal with your videographer on the day, all the way through to a checklist for on the day. So if you're halfway through planning, if you're brand new, if your wedding's only a few weeks away, definitely check out the course because it's full of golden nuggets. So if you want to check that out, it's free, it's in the description below. Catch you in a bit.